Well, of course, my morning show is not called Good News. It's called After the Bell. So, you have to hang around for later when Larry's on to do the Good News show. And there's not very much good news to report this morning. Although, quite frankly, in general, I'm not that, you know me, Pollyanna, but I'm pretty sure this is all going to work out just fine. Well, markets are in a super sour mood this morning with a flight into gold and away from the dollar. President Trump says he wants a strong dollar, and the truth is, this bit of a drop into a more normal range is probably consistent with his interests right now. The gold boom, though, is nuts, and I am crying, beware. That is not investment advice. That is just my normal advice with regard to any market that goes crazy out way past what, you know, famously we call way over its skis. I think gold is due for a big disappointment. Anyway, we'll give you the gold numbers here in just a little bit. What does it mean that tomorrow's earning call is a company update? Now, they don't ever, never have ever called it a company update before. I will add my speculation to the pool, and it won't be that different than everybody else. This is not normally where they do product announcements or updates. Elon has in the past shut down reporters and others who ask questions that are about product introductions or updates. So the obvious reason to change the description of this part of the earnings report is because there's going to be a product update of some kind. And most likely that will have to do with either the robotaxi, could have to do with the Model Q, could be having to do with the 4680, could be all three. If you haven't seen my report from last night, I'll put a card up in that later, but it's getting, yeah, it might get up into record territory in terms of the number of views, where I give you the most Pollyannic, the most optimistic, the most fun earnings call analysis that you've ever seen. But all of the things that I say, I think everything that I said in there is possible, even though it would be shocking, fun, if it all came together in one time. Anyway, you let me know what you think. Do you think that there's going to be product announcements and our product updates tomorrow outside the usual? Troy Teslike is coming in with his number. He's at 38 cents for his earnings tomorrow. That is turning out to be about where folks are lining up. He says that the average analyst is also at 38 cents, though I've seen, as we'll see in a second, some people are saying it's in the low 40s. The lowest number I've seen so far is Bradford Ferguson's number at 30 cents, even though he says that as an organization, I think they're at 30 cents exactly. And he says he thinks it might even be lower personally. James Catt came in. He thinks there'll be $19.9 billion in revenue. He thinks auto margins will come in at 11.4. That is a little less than the street. And he says the adjusted EPS, however, will be at 34 cents. But if you take out the Bitcoin impact, which will be negative this time by by a fair amount, he comes in at 38 cents if you take out the Bitcoin part. There's also another major hit that's going to come. I forget right now what it is, but there's a couple of these little technical things that you could take out. Anyway, investors.com has this. Tesla earnings are on tap Tuesday late. Analysts now sees EPS down 4% to 43 cents. See, they're saying 43 cents, though more recent forecasts point to a larger slide, according to FactSet. Revenues should rise about 1% to 21.3. You can see that's substantially, that's above what James Catt is thinking. And the sharp consensus is for a small decline. As usual, the focus will be more on the call afterwards. Yeah, we can all agree on that. Here's what TipRanks has to say. Wall Street appears more divided right now, with 16 buys, 11 holds, and 12 sell recommendations. Tesla holds a consensus hold rating. Its 12-month average price target of $296 implies 23% upside from what it was when they wrote this article. It would be more than that now, because it's down this morning. So should you buy Tesla going into earnings? That's the question that was asked in the thumbnail. This is not, of course, investment advice. Here's how I look at it. If I was kind of not the Tesla bull, Tesla fanboy, et cetera, I would say the downside risk at this point is still around $180 a share. I think that becomes less and less likely, short of a significant recession. But the upside potential is my call right now for 488 still by the end of May, and 700 to 1,000 by year end. Now, that would seem to me to scream buy. Buying just before earnings, however, is very, very risky, as it could go down 10% after earnings. But not buying going into earnings is risky also, as if it turns out that one or more of those things that I'm predicting last night and just talked about a few seconds ago, if one or more of those things gets reported in a positive way, the stock could be up 10% or more after the earnings call and never, ever look back. So, there's the analysis. You be the judge. In other words, we're up 10% or more on Wednesday, or we're down 10% or more on Wednesday, and we could be going down to 188 or even lower. Some people would say 165 is the really, 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 really bottom. But you know me, I've got us up probably because Robotaxi is going to launch and it's going to do great. And when Robotaxi launches and does great, I think we're at 1,000 by the end of the year. Tesla Roddy says Tesla FSD is the best of China's LiDAR best systems in this very challenging, and they had a video of this, if not a bit dangerous test. Each car was tasked to navigate around a tree in the middle of a narrow road. So somebody had this narrow road and they put a tree, with on purpose. It was a planter, et cetera. It looks like, but based on the results, I think they had like 6 or 7 different vehicles with various kinds of assisted driver. The Tesla did by far the best. He says it looks like Elon Musk's bet on vision only is paying off. Well, this is the time when I say it. This is Randy Kirk. And then like and subscribe and notify, because got Larry Goldberg and Brian White coming from China. Not both. Larry Goldberg will be coming from South Carolina as usual. Brian White, however, will be coming into us from China. So that could be fun. From the Kobasi letter this morning, Trump said today, now listen to this, preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many. With energy costs way down, food prices, including Biden's egg disaster, substantially lower, and most other things trending down, like I would add housing, rentals, et cetera, there is virtually no inflation at this point. Now, look, he's got the same information that we do and probably some more. He and the Fed probably have similar kinds of information to look at, and he feels like there's virtually no inflation. Now, what does virtually no inflation mean? I'm saying, hey, it might still be around 1.5%, 1%. Trueflation has it down around that number. So he says, with these costs trending so nicely downward, just what I predicted they would do, there can be almost no inflation, but there can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, what he's calling Chair Powell, a major loser, lowers interest rates. Now, Europe has already lowered 7 times. Powell has always been too late, except when it comes to election period, when he lowered in order to help sleepy Joe Biden and later Kamala get elected. How did that work out? So anyway, I'm, by the way, tending to agree in general, in principle. Inflation is probably down below the 2% level at this point, and heading and trending lower. And especially with the AI stuff that's coming, I think that it is probably appropriate for Powell to cut. Mario Nafo says this morning, he's reporting on Peter Schiff. The U.S. economy is a bubble built on global charity, and the clock just ran out. Peter Schiff, who called the 2008 crash, says that this next one will be worse, a full-blown inflationary depression, not just a recession. His thesis, the U.S. has been faking prosperity since 2008, living off of printed money, foreign credit, and the illusion that deficits don't matter. Schiff says we are heading into an economic collapse, the likes of which no living American has ever seen. By the way, I don't agree at all with this. U.S. stocks and bonds are going way down. Foreigners are done propping us up. Crypto. It's not digital gold, it's digital risk. We sold all of our cows to buy milk, and now we want to slap tariffs on milk and no cows left to produce it. Trump's being told he's holding a royal flush. He's not. He's drawn dead to an inside straight, and China's got the nut. They have the factories, the infrastructure, the supply chain, and the savings. We've got nothing. So I can take that apart 15 ways from Christmas. We have the 7 largest, I think 9 out of the 10 largest companies in the world. Those companies are doing the things that are going to matter in the future, AI and embodied AI, robots, robotic cars, etc. We are by far the lead in all the things that matter. The manufacturing that we're doing in the United States, like now, for instance, cars, and now getting into chips, I think we're well positioned. I do think the things that Trump is doing and that DOJ is doing are very critical to keep what he's talking about from happening, but I don't think we're in a risk of it happening anytime soon if we can get our act together in time. Long term, he could be right. Short term, I don't think so. Wall Street Journal has this morning. President Trump's deportations, tariffs, federal layoffs, and funding suspensions have generated nonstop headlines and frayed confidence, yet left surprisingly little trace on the economy. Hiring, spending, and inflation look a lot like they did under the last administration. The disconnect is deeply disorienting. United Airlines calling the economic environment impossible to predict this past week, and they gave 2 outlooks for their earnings, one with a recession and one without. Economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal think that hiring will slow sharply this year and that inflation will shoot up, but so far there's little evidence of either. And in fact, I just told you, I think inflation's heading down. Job growth has averaged 173 over the past 2 months combined, although the same as that, about the same as that of the prior 6 months. The unemployment rate has averaged 4.2%, a tenth of a point higher than the prior 6 months. Both overall inflation and Federal Reserve's preferred measure of underlying price pressures have averaged a tenth of a point less. Well, and again, housing is going to have a huge impact on this, and energy already has. This is not hard to figure. The numbers are pretty easy right now in terms of inflation. There is no evidence it's going higher and tons of evidence it's going lower. Elon Musk once said he would slash federal spending by $2 trillion. His Department of Government Efficiency has now claimed a more modest 155, it should say, so far. Yet in the first 80 days of Trump's administration, federal spending was up $154 billion than last year. Meanwhile, despite a border crackdown and deportation push, the number of foreign-born workers continued to grow in recent months, although the data, based on monthly Labor Department sample, might not be fully reliable. Trump's tariffs seem to have led to higher wholesale prices of steel, aluminum, and related products, but not much is happening at the consumer level. Gross domestic product, after growing 2.5 over 2024, is likely to be flat in the first quarter or even contract, but that seems to reflect unusual import behavior and the effect of weather on consumption, not a systemic, I'm adding, not a systemic issue. Behind this disconnect, all of this should make us wonder, is Trump really changing the economy as much as we or he thinks? Well, one obvious reason for the disconnect between the headlines and the data is time lags. Trump's first tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China took effect March 4th. That's only 6 weeks ago. Tariffs on steel and aluminum followed on March 12th, only 5 weeks ago. This much larger 10% universal tariff and 145% tariff on China took effect in early April, only a couple of weeks ago. Tariffs on autos took effect in early April and will take effect on parts next month. So these tariffs are not going to show up until much later. Finally, the president's policies trigger feedback mechanisms that often offset the initial impulses. Some of that feedback is economic. For instance, Trump's tariff threats have darken the outlook for global growth. That has knocked down global oil prices. Nah, there's a lot of other things that did that. Up till now, I think they've been pretty right, but that's just not true. As has a decision by the Organization of Petroleum, exporting countries to increase output. There you go. Air, airline airfares have fallen in the past 2 months in the face of softening demand, possibly reflecting DOGE restrictions on federal employees and foreigners uneasy about U.S. border control policies. And also maybe some Canadians that aren't coming to the U.S. That would be added in there. Gasoline and airfares contributed for a surprising drop in seasonally adjusted consumer prices in March compared to February. Some of the feedback is also behavioral. Trump had promised the largest deportation in history, but his daily removals through early March were actually running a little bit below 2024 levels when Biden was president. According to the Nonpartisan Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, there might be fewer people to deport because illegal border crossings have plummeted under Trump, and vulnerable migrants inside the country are trying harder to avoid the authorities. So what you've got there is a lot of those deportations that are counted under the previous administration would be people that came across and were sent straight back, although they didn't do that very much, but that would be counted those numbers. The longer somebody's in the country, the harder it is to find and deport them. So that could have a big impact on the deportation numbers going forward. All right, just breaking before we came on, the Conference Board leading economic indicators for the U.S. declined by 0.7 in March 2025 to 100.5, with their static number being the 2016 number of 100. This was after a decline of 0.2%, which was revised a little bit up from 0.3 in February. The leading indicators also fell by 1.2% in the 6-month period ending in March 2025. That's a smaller rate of decline than its 2.3 contraction over the previous 6 months. So the quote from 𝐄𝐦𝐬𝐝𝐵𝐵 says that the U.S. LEI for March pointed to slower economic activity ahead. March's decline was concentrated among 3 components. Now, this is where it becomes important. Listen to the 3 components that they say weakened. Uncertainty ahead of pending tariffs. Consumer expectations, number 1, dropped further. So this is a survey. Consumer expectations dropped because of tariff fears. Stock prices came down over what? Fear of tariffs. And then number 3, new orders in manufacturing declined, which has been a trend over months and months and months, although some of the data I'm saying are showing that it's not as bad. Anyway, that said, the data does not suggest that a recession has begun or is about to start. Still, the Conference Board downwardly revised our U.S. GDP growth forecast to 1.6%, which is somewhat below the economy's potential. The slower projected growth rate reflects the impact of deepening trade wars, which may result in higher inflation, supply chain disruptions, less investing and spending, and weaker labor market. Anyway, there's a fairly... Is that optimistic or pessimistic? I'm not sure, but at 1.6% this year, with all the stuff that Trump is doing to completely change the economy in the U.S. and worldwide, that would probably be a good result. People would probably be okay with that result. Okay, Trump, by the way, his approval rating, you may be surprised by this, according to Rasmussen, has popped up to 52%, which is equal to the highest it has been since he took office. How about them apples? All right, where are the markets now? Let's go ahead and take a look. We have got, as I mentioned earlier, it is not a pretty picture, and it is continuing down. Well, no, actually, just curling up a little bit at the edge. The Tesla is down 6.79% to 224.98. We're now starting to get to that particular bottom around 222. Right, it could be 218, 222, depending on who you listen to. But now it is going up just a tiny bit. The Dow Jones is down 1.86% to 38.4. NASDAQ is down 2.55%, and the S&P is down 2% also. By the way, the Tesla is down not quite the full 3% that it might be. I'm sorry, 3 times the NASDAQ, but it's more than the 2%, which suggests that some, at least, of this downward pressure on Tesla could be the earnings call tomorrow. You've got a Magnificent Seven all down, NVIDIA down 5.54%. Compared to Tesla 6.68%, and it doesn't have an earnings call tomorrow. So anyway, going down to the Cathie Woods, believe it or not, the 𝐓𝐿𝐼 and CRISPR are both up, and that might be coincidental because they'd have a lot of CRISPR in the 𝐓𝐿𝐼. So CRISPR might have some good news this morning, up 2.78%. Okay, what about that bond market? Let's go ahead and take a look over there. I know that it's not going the way I wanted to go. Oh, it's better than it was. Okay, we started off over the weekend. We were at 4.333. Right now, compared to Friday night's close, it's up 0.9 of a basis point at 4.336. But over the weekend, as I mentioned, it was down to 4.333. Anyway, that's not as bad as I thought. It's now trending in the right direction. Looks like maybe it could go into negative territory by the end of the day because all of the shorter bonds are down a lot. So, for instance, the 2-year is down 7.2 basis points, and the 2 months is down 3.3 basis points rather. But everything else is already down, and the 10-year continues to fall. It is now only up 0.8 of a basis point. When we go to the oil business, it is down pretty good this morning, down 1.56, $1.56. It is at 63.12, which is still higher, of course, than it was, the 59 being around the low. Brent is a difference of almost exactly, just a little over $3 now. So that would suggest Middle East peace. In general, sort of. Natural gas is down 4.28% at $3.10, getting very close to that $3 number. Now, here's the crazy one. Okay, this is why I'm saying time to sell gold, not investment advice. If I owned gold, I'd be getting out. Up $105 this morning, up 3.16% at 34.33, an all-time high by a lot. Silver chasing, but way behind, up 0.91%, only at $32.76. And of course, recent high was a little over 35. Copper is up 0.88% at $4.78. Don't know whether the rest of commodities are following that. Didn't have a chance to look that up. The dollar is down, as I mentioned before, but quite frankly, if you look at the long-term chart, the dollar is totally in the middle of the range it would normally be in fact, toward the high end of the range, and I think around 3% off of the recent high. So no, I don't look at this as being really anything to be terribly fearful of. You've got Bitcoin up this morning. See, now you no longer see Bitcoin following Tesla as it was for a long time there. Bitcoin is up 3,762 this morning at 88,351. People would say, oh, it's become a new storehouse of value. It's become a place to go when there's a lot of fear in the market. Yeah, okay. So, and then we've got, oh yeah, we already did all that. So let's go ahead. I want to go back. I want to do one last thing here before we go. I want to look at the VIX. Where is the VIX this morning? Okay, VIX is only up to 33.49. The low, recent low has been about 29, 28, around there. 33.49 is not that much higher than that low. And the high was, I think, 60. So it's way, way, way off that 60. So the fear index right now is not that scary. Let's go ahead and take a look at Tesla one last time. I have to figure out how to do that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, continue. It's 225. All right. So don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notify, because notify will get you to Larry Goldberg probably around 4:15, and then 7:15 for Brian White. I will put the card up for last night's show. You don't want to miss that. It is Pollyannic. It is optimistic. But it's actually, I want you to, if you haven't already watched it, please watch it and then comment. Let me know whether you think I'm just completely crazy. Well, let me know if there's anything in there that could not happen tomorrow. I think you'll find that every single thing that I list, and I list a lot, that every single thing that I said could happen tomorrow. None of them are wacko crazy. All of them are within reason. Okay. Would all of them happen tomorrow? 100% every one of them? Maybe not, but maybe. And if a bunch of them happen, or even half of them happen, could have a pretty significant impact on the stock going forward. Okay, what else have I got for you right now? Oh yeah, join Patreon or become a member here on YouTube. And it's a rough morning today, but things will get better. Hey, maybe you own a lot of gold and you're going, this is phenomenal. What a great day. And it is a great day, and it's been great talking to you.